All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Tanya Sadowski, and I am the program coordinator for the Global Engagement Department at the Community Solution Education System. And I want to welcome you all to International Education Week 2025. A little bit about International Education Week. It's a time that we take each year to recognize and celebrate the benefits of international education and global exchange. It's a joint initiative of the United States Department of State and the U.S. Department of Education, universities, and institutions around the globe that are encouraged to create and participate in events around International Education Week that promote global initiatives. What we have for you this week, if it can go, there we go. And you will all be getting a copy of this in the follow-up email and in the chat. But this week, for our department, we have a week full of wonderful events. Today, you are all here for the interdisciplinary approaches to the study abroad experience, innovations, impact, and inspiration. Tomorrow, Tuesday, November 18th, we have our partner in South Africa, Stadio, doing a presentation, Ubuntu to Aloha, ECCE's Global Playbook for Connecting Cultures, Care, and Well-Being. On Wednesday, November 19th, we have an amazing student panel comprised of students from two of our schools, from the Chicago School and the Colleges of Law, who have recently returned from study abroad programs over the summer, and they're going to be on a panel to discuss their experiences, the benefits, everything that they got out of that, and how it's going to impact them moving forward in their careers and their lives. On Thursday, November 20th, we have another presentation from some of our faculty at the Chicago School, as well as a NGO founder in Africa, or India, sorry, it's in India. And that one is Educate to Empower E-Academy, Breaking the Cycle of Poverty Through Education. On Friday, we have two wonderful, wonderful presentations. First, our Global Distinction Program, which is a program that we in the Global Engagement Department run. I will be leading that discussion, just a program overview of what Global Distinction is and what that honor is bestowed upon for students who complete the requirements at graduation. And following that, we will have some of our students who have either completed the Global Distinction Program or are in the midst of it, and really talking about what it means to be a global citizen in general and what they were able to do, from their studies and their experiences, and tie that into their global distinction and, how it was awarded and all of that. We also this year, we're trying something fun and new since we do have people from all over the world that are joining us. We want to hear music that you love, that reminds you of your travels. If you are, an international student or international member, please feel free to add music to our Spotify playlist from your culture, something that just, sort of reminds you of home or a place that you've been, or just inspires you. It is a Spotify playlist, so you will need to have a Spotify account. You can make them for free. There is a QR code there that you can scan. And then we do have a little Microsoft Forms if you want to add just a short description of the song, of course, the title, the artist, and why you selected the song. What does it mean for you? If you want to add that, you can. But please feel free to share your songs with us. That playlist next week will be sent out so everybody can hear it. And of course, continue to contribute to that. Okay. A few tips before we begin the presentation. Like I mentioned before, please mute yourself throughout the presentation, but you can use the chat box and use your reactions throughout. We do have a lot of time at the end for a Q&A session with our speakers. We do request your patience with technology. We will do our best, but should there be any issues, all presentations today's and throughout the week are recorded and will be available on our YouTube playlist at the end of the session. Today, as I mentioned, you are here to listen to an amazing poster presentation from an amazing team. It is the Interdisciplinary Approaches to the Study Abroad Experience, Innovations, Impact, and Inspiration. And we have three wonderful speakers for you today. Kara S. Rice, who's the director of the McNair Scholars in the Office of Student Success at the Chicago School. Astasia Clayborne, who is an undergraduate student in the BA psychology program at the Chicago School, and Dr. Felice Mayes, who's a teaching faculty and professor, also in the BA psychology program at the College of Undergraduate Studies at the Chicago School. So without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and hand it over to our team of speakers. Ladies, it's yours.
Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you, Tanya, so very much. As lead presenter, I will be starting off and want to introduce, of course, the honor to present alongside Astasia and Dr. Mays. It's such a wonderful experience. So I'm going to share my screen. Um, we're having, that is very interesting.
Are you not able to share?
I am sharing, but
There.
it's showing this, and I would like to go back to, I'm not sure what that is. So we're going to stop sharing again. The beauty of presenting.
Happen all the time.
Wonderful. Can
Okay.
you see this?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
We always adjust. So thank you all today for coming and for watching wherever you are in the world. I'm Kara S. Rice, and we'll speak about our study about experiences individually. But as lead presenter, I really wanted to talk about the course and what led us here. So in the summer of 2024, me, Anastasia, and Dr. Mays, along with an amazing cohort of students and staff, went to Johannesburg, South Africa for about 8 days. That also includes travel days, which was very interesting within itself. The course was called Power of One: Psychology in Context. So thankfully, we had the opportunity to participate in the course and then go to South Africa. The course was designed so beautifully by Dr. Mays. It really went into auto intercultural competencies, which included the three dimensions, which is awareness, knowledge, and skills. So the course was really designed to increase our cultural awareness through cultural sensitivity, humility, and empathy. But not just only that, we also focused on social injustices and justices from past and present. So we talked about apartheid, but we also talked about the lingering effects of apartheid that are seen today and what we may run into when we were in South Africa. We also did a lot of assignments that compared the experiences of African Americans and minorities in the United States and paralleled that with those in South Africa as well. So there was a lot of parallels between apartheid and civil rights movement and how the lingering effects are still impacted today. We also talked about power and oppression. We also talked about resilience within cultures after collective trauma. And that is what Astasia will be talking about when we think about caregiver fatigue and resilience. A lot of the NGOs that we practiced or that we visited, they talked about resilience quite often because they were caregivers. They were caring for their community, providing for their community, but they also talked about burnout. So how does that impact their resilience? We also talked about advocacy for marginalized community, specifically with the focus on those who are aspiring to practice professions within psychology and other mental health professions. We did a lot of pre-assessments, including the intercultural development inventory, but we also did reflexive journals, a part of that, which I truly loved because it wasn't just learning this information, we were also reflecting on it, figuring out our biases so that we can unlearn some things before we go to South Africa. And then also my favorite assignment that we did that didn't just talk about cultural competencies, we also talked about the media in South Africa, where we talked about the first time we heard about apartheid, the first time we heard of Nelson Mandela, the first time we heard of South Africa as a real place, you know? And I really love that because we didn't just go into how to be culturally competent, but actually embracing and immersing ourselves in the culture before we actually get there. We talked about the movie Serafina that starred Whoopi Goldberg. We talked about the viral TikTok sensation that was based in a South African song called Shawala Bam, things of that nature. But what made this course really impactful was the fact that there was every level of education represented. We had undergraduate students, we had master's students, we had a doctoral student, which was me, and then we also had a postdoctoral student. So we had all of these perspectives, but even different levels of education, which leads into my point of, or my part of the presentation, which talks about power dynamics in student-staff relationships. I was there registered in the course as a doctoral student, and we even had assignments that catered to each of our levels of education. So, as a doctoral student, I did have to develop a research proposal where I was going to conduct a study within one of those NGOs, and it was different for each level of education. But when you think about the power dynamics in student-staff relationships, I'm a student. I'm also a staff member who works with our McNair scholars. We even had McNair scholars on the trip. One of Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. One of our scholars even asked me, how do you feel about being in this course with us as a doctoral student? And I said, I have to log into Canvas on Wednesday just like you. I have to submit assignments just like you. Yes, it's a different level, but it's still the same playing field as we're trying to get a beautiful and experiencing a beautiful experience, but we're also on different levels, but it's okay because we're all doing the same things on a certain level. But it really acknowledges that students are walking with a power dynamic, and that as a staff member, it's my responsibility to leverage that. So it's being open, it's being honest, it's being transparent, it's letting students, it's letting my staff members, my colleagues see me as more than just a student and more than just a staff member, but then also remembering when the trip is over, we still have to go back to that dynamic. And so it's really leveraging those relationships, balancing being open, being transparent, but still having a certain level of professionalism and a certain level of decorum, especially when we return back to being a staff, student, and faculty. And that is my point of, or I don't know why I keep saying point, but that is my part of the presentation. And my point is that there are power dynamics that students experiences, that staff experience, but it's a two-way street. When you work together, you can develop a really, really beautiful dynamic, but it does take both and acknowledgement of it. And so give the presentation over to Astasia, who will talk about caregiver fatigue and resilience. And that's something that we focused on when it comes to the collective trauma of those who are in these communities.
Thank you so much, Kara. You did an outstanding job summarizing our Power of One course. And yes, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Astasia Clayborne, and I'm a BA psychology student here at the Chicago School. And yes, I had the amazing opportunity to study abroad in Johannesburg, South Africa, alongside Dr. Mayes and Kara and other classmates and staff members. But yeah, during this experience, I focused on understanding caregiver resilience through several visits to NGOs and community organizations across education, healthcare, and social support. But this was more than just a trip. For me, it was very deeply transformative, academically and personally. And today I want to share a bit about how that experience has shaped my understanding of culture, caregiving, and global mental health, and how it's directly connected to both my coursework as well as my research on caregiver well-being. Um, so before traveling, as Kara mentioned, we were in this class in The Power of One, and it emphasized the meaning of change and how it often begins with one person, but becomes sustainable through collective action. We examined how individuals can spark change, but it is communities, systems, and culture that maintain it. At the time, I understood that intellectually, but being in Johannesburg, I was able to understand it in a more tangible and emotional way. Um, the course definitely pushed us to think critically um, about service, leadership, relational responsibility, and the structures that either support or undermine resilience. These themes became incredibly relevant once we stepped into the communities doing the everyday work. So During our time in Johannesburg, we met with NGO leaders supporting children, families, um, educators, and mental health care workers. These conversations were very dynamic and honest. They were full of pride, challenges, and a deep commitment to community well-being. What stood out immediately to me was the thread around caregiver resilience. Um, and so we saw how caregivers, whether they be teachers, social workers, or community leaders, we saw how they were able to navigate compassion fatigue while supporting children and families in these very high stress environments. And what moved me most was the organization's intentionality around building systems of support around caregivers rather than expecting individuals to cope alone. And so, um, that kind of made me think more about how the United States and people in Johannesburg, South Africa, view resilience more as like a cultural practice. So, thinking more about the U.S., we kind of we frame coping as a personal responsibility, and it could look like, you need to set more boundaries. You need to manage your stress. You need to practice self-care. While those are all very important, they're also very individualistic strategies rooted in Western models of wellness, sorry. And on the flip side, in Johannesburg, um, resilience was more relational and it was rooted in community connection, shared responsibility, collective strength, and mutual uplift. So caregivers weren't expected to hold everything alone, but cultural norms encouraged collaboration, interdependence, and shared purpose. So seeing resilience function more as a community system rather than an individual skill was illuminating for me. Yeah, so how this connects to my research. So I was a McNair scholar on that trip, and my research has focused on caregiver well-being, anxiety, and the emotional barriers that impact their children's emotional barriers that impact children's progress in applied behavior analysis therapy for student or children with autism. And just like across studies, I found that caregiver psychological distress is one of the strongest predictors of slow treatment progress, inconsistent therapy, engagement, reduced generalization of skills, and decreased attendance. And also here in the US, many interventions only target the child. Um, Again, caregiver support is often optional, secondary, or underdeveloped. It's not woven into the models generally, the therapeutic models. And so my work has shown that caregiver anxiety, grief, or burnout can significantly affect the trajectory of a child's therapy, and sometimes more than the clinical techniques themselves. So parents who are overwhelmed, undersupported, or emotionally exhausted, they often struggle to participate in treatment routines, advocate for their child, or maintain consistency at home. So what Johannesburg taught me was that this isn't a personal failure. This is more of a systemic issue. Um, when caregivers thrive when they're embedded in strong communities networks, they're not isolated when cultural practices are encouraged and shared around caregiving, and when systems intentionally reduce emotional load. The NGOs that we visited embodied exactly what the research recommends. I understood that resilience is not built through community, or sorry, resilience is built through community scaffolding, not individual grit. So when I take a step back, there were three threads that really connected. One, the power of one, our course that taught me that individual impact is important, but systems sustain change. Um, Two, Johannesburg showed me what that looks like culturally and practically. And my caregiver research confirms that caregiver well-being is shaped by far more by context than willpower. And together, these experiences reinforced a central truth, which is we can't talk about resilience without talking about culture, community, and systems of support. Yeah, and so that kind of like takes me to how this has changed me as a future clinician and researcher. Um, this experience fundamentally shifted my goals and my perspective. And going forward, I'm committed to integrating cultural competency, humility, and community-centered thinking into my future work as a clinical psychologist and a researcher. I want to design interventions that acknowledge the emotional load caregivers carry, the cultural factors that shape coping, and the structural and systemic barriers that make resilience harder. And also, again, the importance of shared responsibility in healing. It cannot be done in isolation. Yeah, so this trip made me a better listener, a more culturally aware thinker, and a more intentional future clinical psychologist. And so, one last thing, if anyone is considering studying abroad, I would say please do it. Even if you're scared, probably especially if you're scared and unfamiliar. Um, it's not just about traveling, it's really about expanding who you are, how you understand the world around you, and what you do with that going forward, and so much more. But I will keep it short and leave it there. Thank you. And I will pass the torch to Dr. Mays.
Thank you so much, Astasia and Kara as well. Both of you, it was great to hear your perspectives as students and staff. Astasia, I'm gonna put you on the spot for a second, ask you one question. I think it's important for people to kind of see what made you think about the caregiver fatigue and resilience. I remember being at the orphanage there in Johannesburg and watching you interact with one of the caregivers and just how compassionate you were for her experience. Do you mind sharing just a little bit of that, just to give the audience maybe a picture of what that was like for you, kind of setting the scene a little bit?
Yeah, so my background is in behavior analysis. I've been an ABA therapist for about 10 years, and I saw firsthand what it looked like for parents of children who have disabilities to be stressed and overwhelmed, not know what to do, feel hopeless, um, and experience, I'm sure, just like a myriad of other feelings that I can't capture right now. But I've always had a lot of like compassion for them and just seeing them overwhelmed and wanting to help, right? And so compassion isn't enough. Like I think like, well, maybe it is, but with action. So how can I help alleviate what you're experiencing in a very tangible and long-term way? And that's by providing you with strategies and tools that will help reduce maladaptive behaviors and increase adaptive behaviors and independence and emotional regulation, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is just where I was coming from. And so to see someone a staff member in the orphanage, and you can see the weight that they're carrying. And I just had that, I was compelled to talk, I was compelled to listen, empathize, and want to do more going forward. And so, yeah, I would say it was very automatic for me, just given my background, my work history. And yeah, it was really interesting to learn how they were coping and leaning on one another. If you can't go to therapy every Wednesday, how are you handling this immense stress of caretaking for these young children? Some of them may be identified or unidentified, around, with disabilities potentially. How are you dealing with behaviors? I'm just really glad that they were able to lean on each other, but also it sparked within me, like, how can I contribute to this community in a really tangible, long-term way? So
Thank you so
I
much.
answered your question.
You did, you did.
Okay.
I just thought it was important for the audience to kind of get a picture of what you listened to and tapped into in South Africa. So, just to introduce myself to everybody, my name is Felice Mayes. I'm a professor in the BA Psychology program. And to back up a little bit, to tell you kind of about my background. So, my background is in counseling. I am a licensed professional counselor, and back in 2013, I really started thinking about kind of what's next for me. And so it's where I got connected to the Chicago School and to their international psychology program. I always had a passion for how psychology and culture came together. But the idea of going on field experiences really perked my interest. I didn't really know what that meant at the time. I thought, no, I'm interested in travel. Very limited view at the time for me. But as I went and experienced cultural immersion myself with resources of learning, I really came to grow in my own ability of how I see the world, moving from more of a monocultural view to a more of a multicultural view or multidimensional view. And so for me, when I develop a study abroad course, I really think about my past experiences that have been life changing for me. And that's what I want to do for students. And so I think the biggest thing that I learned was the intercultural competency component. It's really sparked my interest over the last few years, and I've built it now into a couple of courses. One of those is that one of the aspects of that is that I implement what's called the IDI, which is the Intercultural Development Inventory. And so basically what this is it's a chance for people to go back and examine themselves, look at how they see the world, how they interact with others that are similar and different than them, and then really kind of set goals for themselves about where they want to grow, how they want to change, things like that. And so that was naturally built into the course. One thing that's interesting is the first time that I took the IDI, I thought, well, gosh, I am going to be so far evolved. I'm going to be so far down the continuum. Nope, I was right there, smack dab in the middle, with plenty of growth left to do. And so I think that's what I've learned too through study abroad experiences is that by the end of it, you realize how much you don't know and how much more you have to learn and experience. And it's such a gift to be able to experience different cultures. And so the idea of, why is it important? Why is intercultural competency important? And why did we focus on that in this class so much? Is that, when we interact with other cultures, we can have a lot of the knowledge and the skills, and that can kind of get us so far. But the thing is there's no way humanly possible that we could learn all of the different nuances, variations, strengths, all of that about different cultures before going. It just would be impossible, the depth to learn of culture. However, what we can do is adopt a stance of cultural humility, cultural sensitivity, and cultural empathy. And these were all the things that really I tried to put into the course for students. However, what I learned especially through this study abroad experience, was that you cannot go through something like this and just teach about cultural humility. You have to practice it. And part of it, you don't always practice it intentionally. We should, but sometimes it happens naturally. And so one of the things that happened in the study abroad experience from a faculty perspective is that we would run basically debrief groups after every big outing that we did that was emotional in nature. It gives students the opportunity to kind of process their emotions, reflect on their experiences, see if there's anything they want to take away from it, but also deal with anything that may be residual that's being stuck and left behind. And so when we were finishing up at the Apartheid Museum, we had a debrief session. And a lot of times, we started as the faculty and we kind of ask some questions and we get students to respond. But in listening to one of our hosts at the time, one of the liaisons at the time, talk about her experience of growing up in South Africa and what that was like coming from basically the culture of majority, and some of the shame that she felt through that. It resonated with me a lot in my own personal experiences here in the United States. And so as I shared that with the class, I started to become tearful. I started to become very humble at that moment about my experience, that I was not coming from a place of knowing all of it, but really coming from a place of growth and being able to express that to students. And so what I noticed is that, and that's part of what is in the poster presentation here, is that when I untethered myself from the expectation and the experiences of what I thought it had to be as a faculty of a study abroad, I was able to really connect at a deeper level, not only with my students, but with myself and my own experience of this beautiful culture. And so for me, I think that what I'd like to share, the most important thing that I'd like to share is that for faculty that are leading study abroad, there's such a big benefit that's beyond just the experience of going somewhere and beyond giving, an opportunity for students that's life-changing. It's life-changing for us as well. You cannot go into an experience like this and not come out unchanged if you are willing to be culturally sensitive, humble, and have empathy for other people, not only for our students, but for the host country that we're visiting. So just kind of in summary of that, when educators allow themselves to be untethered from the classic roles of teacher and student within education, the idea of learning can be reconceptualized. Oftentimes, faculty solely consider the student experience in terms of the learning objectives, the experiential learning activities, and logistics of service learning projects when studying abroad. And these are all very important things. But it goes beyond that. The cultural immersion activities, they hold spaces that encourage development-inducing experiences for faculty too, not just for students. So teaching a study abroad course provides an opportunity for professional development by increasing the skills in intercultural competency, such as cultural empathy and cultural humility. If you have the opportunity to teach a study abroad course and develop a study abroad course, you'll gain increased knowledge for your own professional growth, but you also intentionally focus on bias awareness. You naturally come in and start to kind of check yourself as you come into a new culture. And I can give so many different examples of this, but this is just such a small one. So one thing that was different about going into South Africa is that kind of some of the customs when you just greet people. So when you go into South Africa, you ask people how they're doing. And it's not just like, oh, how are you? And then moving right along. It's genuinely asking people, how are you doing? And then how is your day going? And giving them the opportunity to respond. They'll ask you as well, and then you will respond before you ever go into, hey, can I get the key to my room at the hotel? Or before, oh, can I get a water at this restaurant? You immediately, it's a difference in cultures. And I found myself not always following that, kind of falling back into my default mode of the culture that I come from. And so, again, that bias awareness, that was just a small example, but there are so many examples that I could share with you. But also, these things happen organically in the reflective activities, especially if you choose to engage in topics of power, oppression, and marginalization. You will have meaningful conversations if you're willing to have those talks. And ultimately, for me, the reflective component of facilitating a study abroad course, it doesn't just benefit the learners. Again, it benefits the educators as well. And it illustrates how study abroad fosters a transformative experience, a reciprocal learning experience, while also looking at global issues within also interpersonal challenges. So, thank you for just allowing me to share my experience from teaching a study abroad course. I'm so thankful to the Chicago School and also the Community Solution for having these types of programs and opportunities available. Because if it wasn't for the system in place, we none of us would have experienced this. So I just like to take a moment, to thank, and then also some of my past mentors. I was able to actually grow in this way because of my mentor, Dr. Breda McGrath, who's now the president over at Pacific Oaks. She was my she was my department chair when I was in the international psychology program. So when I saw my mentor um, act in a certain way, it really modeled for me kind of how to be when going through different cultures and different experiences. And so this is what I try to pass on to my students as well. And hopefully the torch will continue. But thank you for allowing me. And then I'll let Kara take it back over in case she wants to ask the audience any questions or things like that. Thank you so much.
And just to echo the sentiment, just thank you tremendously for the space to talk about our experiences. South Africa within itself, I just feel indebted to be able to experience that with my cohort, with Dr. Mays. It was absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for giving us the space to talk about it, because I can talk about it continuously. So thank you, thank you. And does anybody have any, and wanted to give it to Astasia? Astasia, did you have any closing remarks before we open it up to questions?
I again echo you and Dr. Mays with just being thankful for the opportunity to participate, the system that is in place for it to exist. And again, I would encourage others to definitely study abroad if they can, for all the reasons we've mentioned. But thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. I put in the chat the poster that we presented at APA. We forgot to mention that one of the other benefits of study abroad is being able to come together afterwards and do some type of scholarly presentation, which we always try to do. And so we were able to do this with Division Two, with APA, and that was this last year. So thank you. I put that in there in case anybody would like a copy of it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Mays. And did anybody have any questions for all of us, each of us? The floor is yours. Hearing none. Going once. Okay, well, thank you so, so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you so, so much for watching. And you are always more than welcome to follow up with us if you have any questions or would love to hear more about our experiences. We would love to speak with you. And thank you, Tanya, so much for facilitating this experience. We truly appreciate it. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And thank you.
And on behalf of the global engagement team at the Community Solution, thank you all so much. Absolutely wonderful to hear about your experiences from so many different perspectives on one trip. It's fantastic. It seems like you all just took something so special away. Thank you so much for all of you for attending. Please, please, please do join us throughout the rest of this week for our other upcoming International Education Week events. That is it for today. I want to thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day and a wonderful rest of your week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.